Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Wednesday, January 19th edition of the Daily Pulse. I'm your host, 𝗘𝗿𝗃𝗀𝗀, coming here from the WellPoint Studios here in downtown Lowell, and my special guest, you may have caught a glimpse of him on the opening shot over there, but joining us this morning is Lowell City Councilor Erik Gitschier, and I believe this is your second appearance on Inside Lowell doing a podcast, but you're first in the WellPoint Studio. So let me welcome you to the WellPoint Studios, Councilor.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We actually had booked this, we were talking about three weeks ago. We'd get you on in here, and because I'm trying to get councilors in every Wednesday morning following the council meeting. And you guys had a council meeting, another one of those that they're going to talk about for the ages, as they say, right?
I don't know. I think it's a moment in time.
A moment in time. That's true. Once we move on to the next...
There's always something tomorrow.
It always disappears.
Or today.
Yeah. And by the way, the Lowell citizen Ryan Gildea has already posted his recap of the main theme last night. He calls his articles "Government Was Happening," and you can catch it on InsideLowell.com if you haven't already. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. He just put it live right before I hit the record button, but you can head over there and see it. Government Was Happening, Ryan Gildea, the Lowell citizen. We're going to talk about government happening last night and government happening really over a long period of time with Councilor Gitschier. Let me first thank our Daily Pulse sponsors, of course, Ray Booten, licensed realtor, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, certified appraiser in both of those states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home or a commercial property in either of those states or have them appraised, have that property appraised, Ray Booten is your man. Find him online. realestaterayBooten.com. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint for hosting us here in the WellPoint Studios. WellPoint is the only health plan offering health care benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. We got a bunch of other sponsors we'll thank in a few minutes, but I want to get right down to it with Councilor Gitschier. What everybody was talking about leading up to last night's meeting, I guess during the meeting, you had other issues, but I would bet most of the public tuned out after the discussion. City Manager Tom Golden, by a 7-4 vote last night, the council voted to offer him an extension and then go into some kind of negotiations. First, I want your overall take on that discussion last night.
Well, Teddy, as you know, in government, everything is not as easy as it performs, especially when you're heavily reliant on state and federal funding and grants and future funding. And over the past few years with the opera funding and the budgets, we've seen major increases in employees' employment that we've put on the payroll. And when you look at it, we have 39 employees that are full-time out of the opera funding. They also go on to the healthcare, where we're seeing the healthcare increases that are astronomical. We were told that those weren't going to be like that if we went to GIC, but you know, you're still seeing those astronomical. Now they're actually rivaling Blue Cross Blue Shield's pay when we told that wasn't going to happen. So when you start looking at even the other employees' benefits, you're talking we're almost into $1 billion in debt in that piece, and no one seems to have a trigger on how to figure that out in our city. So when you start looking at all of these future revenues coming in, it's very hard to project those. And when you talk about employees' contracts, whether it's the manager, any employee that works for us, we're a team, as you said about like the Link project. It's a team. It doesn't come as one entity starts this up and it just magically appears and one person always gets credit. You have to work as a team to do these things together. When you're the leader of the bunch and you're the pack that council is, we have to set expectations for other employees. There's no other employee in the city that's going to see those type of contract extensions with those type of raises in it. You know, you're going to, if it continues the way it has now, that contract, and gets the same COLAs and everything, it's a $320,000 contract at the end. It's a lot of money to guarantee out. And then when we got to go back into negotiations with unions, are we going to offer them 0 and 1s because we're not getting the state finance, or are we going to lay people off? So you got to have that balance when you go through. A leader leads. Is the manager going to take 0s in those out 3 years? I don't know that issue because we're not negotiating that. My concern is, where does the revenue source come from? What is the projection that goes down to the average employee? And you can't be successful as a manager, as a city council, without being successful with your employees. Your employees are what make you successful. You manage the pieces but middle management in the city has been failing for a long time. You look at our facilities, we're trying to put that together. That's a cost that we were just talking about, $5 million to start that department. You look at the water department right now. In the history of that department, we have the same number of employees. We hired people who don't have the skill set that should be doing it. We didn't hold them accountable to have the licenses we needed to run the equipment and do the main breaks. So what do? We hire our contractors to fill the back end of that, costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars, where we used to have city employees do that at a rate cut. So all of these things come into play when you start talking future contract pieces. And it's only fair if I'm going to treat the janitor one way, the manager should have some kind of balance to treat the same people.
All right. A lot of good points there and a lot of things that I want to get into. But let's talk about the contract, because so it's not like the city's not going to have a city manager. Let's put the name Tom Golden aside. If Tom Golden is gone in 2 years or 5 years, you're going to have to hire somebody into that job. Do you think it's realistic that person you're going to, because you're talking about, well, we got to, that's a lot of money to budget for. Well, you're going to have to budget for it one way or the other anyway. You're not going to operate without a city manager.
Well, I've never seen a manager come in at less than the previous manager.
Correct. So
that's a major problem.
So if he leaves in 2 years, the next person's going to come in at a very likely, now maybe the council at the time holds the line in negotiations, but I've never seen anybody come in for less money, and I've never seen a union take a pay cut when their contracts come up for renegotiation, right? So one way or another, you're going to have to budget.
Well, I don't think that's true.
$275,000 to $300,000.
I don't think that's true, Teddy. When you talk about people, you've never seen a union go backwards. When you look at the inflation that we're seeing today, and you're looking at the number, when you take a rate of 4% at $250,000, which is 10 grand, right? And you look at 4% at $60,000, they did take a cut. So that's the balance to this whole piece, is that when you start looking at, if you just give that same across the board percentage rate, people lose money at the bottom end where the separation gap goes further.
But you're always going to have that manager. And
no, there's no question.
So let the school department, so there's what, 1,000 teachers? So that extra 10,000 for the city manager disappears with 2 teachers, and you have 9,909.
Are we willing to make those cuts? I haven't seen a cut since.
I don't think you're ever.
When's the last time we saw an employee cut, a layoff in the city of Lowell?
I probably have to go back to the days of Bernie Lynch.
Do you think? No, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you think it's properly staffed and people are giving you a good, fair workday?
Do I think the city is properly staffed?
Yeah.
I would bet you that there's any level of government, there is tremendous inefficiency. I don't believe that government can do anything more efficiently than the private sector can do it.
We heard you talk about DEI. Do we still have that going on in the city of Lowell? We heard you go over and over again in the last couple of weeks about how the trend is across this country that people are cutting back on DEI. Yeah. Have we made that decision?
Are you guys ready to make it?
That would be the manager. He's operations again.
Okay, but is the council going to ask that?
These are the questions that have to come up in budget time.
So, yeah, we're talking
when you're starting when these budgets get tight and you're not seeing the funding from the state and federal government. We've seen this in the 90s, and we're just repeating history. And when you look at it, there were cuts, and you saw it in 2008, the same thing. And we should be bracing for this, not wait till it happens and then flip people upside down. I personally think we hired people into positions that we knew we were not going to have the funding for afterwards, and now we took them out of somewhere, flipped their families upside down for a short period of time, and now we're going to have to send them. And that's what we're trying to brace for and say, look, the manager does a phenomenal job. It's not about the manager, and we've discussed that multiple times. And people can say whatever they want to say. It's about function of government. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it, I think it was '𝗵𝗵𝗫 that said the person, the average person is not going to be able to afford government. Now let's talk about that.
The private sector can no longer afford the public sector.
Right.
He said it on an interview with me. And shifting sands, solid ground becomes shifting sands.
Right.
That was in 2010. And government has deteriorated since then.
Way worse than it's ever been.
Okay.
No question. And when you look, now let's look at the dynamics of the city of Lowell, right? We have to always play in that, right? Because we're so reliant elsewhere. 19% or 8,045 families in the city of Lowell, household families. That means husband, wife, kids, everything, make under $25,000. Do you realize I gave back $25,000 this year to the city of Lowell? When you look at that, that's depressing. And we're reliant on the state and federal government to make up these numbers. When you look at even the median income in the city of Lowell, $73,000. This came out of the budget. 73,000 or almost 31,000 families in the city of Lowell make less than $73,000. We got a governor in this state who still is reactive rather than proactive. When you look now, she wants to go after the Department of Public Utilities because they increased the rates by 25%. Well, you didn't know that when they were doing it?
No,
where were you?
She didn't know it when she bragged about, as Attorney General, killing 2 pipeline projects.
Right. Where were you?
I just pointed that out first. But listen, I'm with you on all of this.
Where do the funds come from? And if we're going to send a message, we send it to the top employees. We say, listen, you know what? I get what you're saying. Let's see what the future funding coming in is. And if it's there, I'm with you. There is nobody who wants to see somebody progress this city more than I do. You know, the manager has progressed this city. When you start looking at our road work, okay? And I know people say, oh, it's road work. Well, road work brings people. You understand that, right? A clean community brings people into it. A school department, when you look at our schools, our facilities, if you can't learn with them, have you seen our MCAS scores? And some of it comes down to the environment that you learn within. You had needles, people shooting up. We fought those issues. We pushed to move the camps away from there. We fought for better, cleaner schools. We're pushing in that direction. I have always said to the city manager this: I want to see year 3 and 4 of your contract, because I think that's when you're going to have the biggest grab. Year 0 to 1 in that contract was based off of the previous manager, and you're trying to get your legs under you. So that gives 2 years to where we are right now. Year 2, we were setting policies and trying to set direction. Right? And now we're starting to see not even some of the fruit yet. We've seen signings of things that we want to come, but they haven't come to fruition. We saw that in the Hamilton Canal District. We signed, everyone back then was, hey, great, 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 great. Well, what's happened? Nothing, because those contracts were so heavily favored to the people who are doing the development that here we are today.
All right. So there's a lot of stuff in there that's kind of being mixed in. And again, if you want to talk about changing the way government operates on a day-to-day basis, cutting it because the private sector can no longer afford the public sector, I'm going to be your biggest ally.
Have I not talked 100%. About that for 3 years?
Well, when you're asking, though, for improved services, how are those improved services going to come?
The improved services are coming by day-to-day operations, like the police going down there and having the background to move the people away from. If you don't think when you build a building that you have to maintain the heating units within and you just let them fail, it costs you more when in the failure piece. So that's an improvement to government's efficiency that works.
100%. You think you're going to solve the budget issues in Lowell and elsewhere by doing that, just by, well, you think that's going to happen tonight, tomorrow, whenever?
Have you seen better government since I've been on the board? Have you seen things change?
Yes, I have.
Have we been a driving force in that direction?
Yes, and I've seen a manager who's implemented much of that stuff that you guys have asked for. But you guys have asked for increased levels of services. Yes, you've asked for efficiencies, but every time you send that police officer down to South Common to shoo away a homeless person or a vagrant, that's taking a resource away from somewhere else. Have you asked to increase the police budget so you can have other police officers anywhere?
Over those same 3 years, have we put away large amounts of free cash?
Yes, you have.
So has the revenues increased or decreased?
Has that free cash earned you interest and gotten you better ratings that will get you a lower bond rate?
Because that's what we did, is we made decisions that actually worked for the government. But when you look at it, we can't go forward. When you look at this free cash that was just presented to us, do you realize, I'll ask you the question, do you realize where those funds came from?
Probably from the taxpayers.
Well, of course it came from tax.
And there was some interest payments that were made, and then ARPA money was put in the bank, and interest payments came from it. Sure.
So almost 50% on both sides was motor vehicle excise tax. It was $3 million over.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So that came from an outside source. And the other piece was investments, which were, because of the ARPA funding got shifted around, it opened up money. So you can't guarantee those two pieces when you walk forward. So we have to manage a tighter budget. And we've pushed that, look, if we're going to do these things, we have to do it at the middle management level. We have to hold middle managers accountable so we get efficiency, so we don't have to do what you're saying is add employees, but get better efficiencies. When we just walked through, and I'm going to change the pace because I know you want this. We just walked through the high school on Saturday. It's a disgrace.
Yep.
The maintenance piece is a disgrace. And, you know, the sad part is you got a brand new floor over there, high school, brand new. It's not brand new. It's 2.5 years old. Basketball court. There's gum on the floor. It's hazed. There's chips taken out of it. It's never been maintained since it got put in. It has never been sanded down and revarnished, nothing. And they expect this to last. It's not going to last. You get chips taken out. So why are we not, I walk through, you would think they know you're walking through and they would have it cleaned, but there's gum on the floor and there's, you know, the tears in the track. Well, those bleachers were supposed to be inspected once a year. They were never inspected. So if something goes out of whack 1/4 of an inch, they'll find it during the inspections and prevent those things from happening. We didn't do any of that. We said, oh, there's a tear. Okay, let's keep running the thing. You know, so that's where the balance comes in of how do we lead? And again, going back to the whole talks of how do we create efficiencies that save money in the long runs, you're going to have to hire good employees and hold them accountable. And I think that's
Are you going to have to pay those employees?
We already have them. Okay. And if they're not doing their job, then they should be moved on.
But are you going to have to hire a good one, a better one for those who aren't doing their job?
Why would it be
to pay them?
Why would it be a better one if we have no professional development? Why are we not doing professional development? So if I hired 𝗘𝗶𝗹𝗇 back in 1995 and I didn't send him off and he was an HVAC specialist, you know what I get? 1995 𝗘𝗶𝗹𝗆 technology. I don't get new technology. When that high school was getting ready to be built 2.5 years ago, I asked, you need a maintenance department down there. The revenues will be saved in the maintenance budget to employ people. You see the offset? That's how that shell game works.
And we're moving towards that, right?
No,
that was a
2.5 years later after it's built. And now the problem is that all the infrastructure is already covered by walls. The people who put in the heating units are long gone. All these things are already done with no training or no background. Institutional knowledge it costs a lot of money if it's not there at the time of being built.
Yeah, but we're pointing to mistakes of the past.
But we're highlighting things we can do better in the future.
Mistakes being made. And is this the right manner? Is this manager been proactive on this stuff? In terms of a facilities department over the last
he was not when we first brought it up.
In the beginning.
We were told it was okay out of lands and buildings. I highlighted there is no way you could manage a building that size out of lands and buildings. It took 2.5 years to figure out, okay, after you had issues brought to a city council and after you see, you know, when you go into the locker room, Teddy, when you have a bench that comes out and it has no stability underneath it, and you sit on it with Vesna Noon, who weighs 130 pounds, and you watch the thing bend down, you know we got problems. Why didn't they put block under it? Now they're talking about putting legs on it, which kids will kick off. Why wouldn't you block it like you did
You're
everything
talking
else?
about a construction project that the die was cast in 2018. And I was part of the same group you were.
But we paid the oversight.
That fought for it.
We paid for the oversight of it.
You're paying a project manager who's, again, and I'm going to get into the details, who I believe has been terrible in project managing when you have these kind of issues. But before we wrap up on the manager, though, so one way or another, there's going to be a manager. They're probably not going to take a pay cut. The best you can hope for is to negotiate a contract that's more friendly to the taxpayers. When I kept hearing the time isn't now, the time isn't now, I remembered Mookie Betts. I remembered John Lester. You're a baseball guy. Red Sox said, time to talk about extensions with John Lester isn't now. The time to talk about an extension with Mookie Betts isn't now. And the price, when it got closer to free agency, the price didn't go down. It actually exponentially skyrocketed. Now, do I expect you guys, Tom Golden to get a Mookie Betts contract?
The projections of baseball at the time and Lowell's budget based off of the taxpayer is totally two different projections.
But when you're doing an extension, you have an opportunity. You're not renegotiating these last 2 years. I would hope that you guys aren't going to rip up the last 2 years of the contract. Whatever was agreed to that the city would pay and that the manager will get is what he's going to get. Now you've got an extension. Can you get a better deal for those 3 years than you would have if you have to go out to free agency?
And I think that's the question we asked in the beginning. I think that's what I said to you in the beginning when I said, I don't know if the manager's going to take 0.00 on the backside. I don't know what those percentage increases are. Are they going to stay the same? We just okayed negotiating a 3-year contract without even understanding any of that stuff. So that's the question. That's why it is bad timing. Why would I not wait the other year when government doesn't go up more than 4% in the history of government. And we're already at that 4%. We're already at the max we've seen employees get when they're at those rates. There is no advantage to doing this right now, except for if you think Tom Golden's going to leave, which in my opinion, and speaking to the manager, I asked the manager a couple of questions. I said, you know, are you ready to go somewhere? Is there something that we don't know? And he said, I love Lowell. I'm dedicated to Lowell. This is where I want to be. So there's no need. I said, did you ask the council to put this forward? No. Why would the driver be from the other side to say, okay, rather than take on the efforts we have in front of us? There is no need to do any of this. I understand the position. He'll be 50.
You know there's always a political need, Councilor.
So, all right, you just said the answer. You said the answer. So why not just be honest and say, listen, we're worried about elections. Why not say that?
No, this is a political discussion. You have an employee that a majority of the council thinks is doing a good job. And even though
I think everybody on the council thinks
vote for this extension said he's doing a good job.
He's done a great job with his handed.
Why not try to lock him up? And again, to negotiate more favorable rates going forward, because whoever comes in after him, whenever it is not going to start at less money. You're not going to save money.
You don't know that. You don't know that. We don't know what's going to happen in the economy. We've seen it before the economy go down, and we've seen
2009, and I never saw a manager's contract go down.
Well,
I thought managers get raises.
It's because every manager you put in was a political person who called their friends and got the same thing.
What about in Chelmsford? What about in Tewksbury?
Chelmsford, he's been there for 14 years and took a 3 year.
Yeah, but when he took Bernie Lynch's job, he didn't take a pay cut to take Bernie Lynch's job.
I think he did. I'll go back on that.
He was. Did Bernie Lynch take a pay cut when he?
No, we were going to Chelmsford.
Pick any town. Bernie Lynch was a professional manager.
I think Cohen did take a pay cut versus what Bernie was getting paid.
And how did it go in the ensuing years?
Of course, you're going to. Everything goes up. Right. It's going to go up.
So you've got managers in surrounding towns who are making close to what manager.
No, they're not. No, they're not. When you post in on Paul Cohen, I think it was 220, and he just got his 3-year deal. Right now, we're paying
220 for a town of 60,000.
Well, that's not what you just said. You said they're getting paid comparable.
They are.
The money's not there.
Is the job of a Chelmsford manager easier or more difficult than Lowell's manager?
I don't know the dynamics of Chelmsford because like you tried to compare Chelmsford's Parks Department at one time to Lowell's,
yes,
and then quickly found out that they were getting cut, and basically it was done by volunteers. So
which is how it used to be in Lowell. It's
not comparable.
Listen, if you want to start
you're comparing an apple and orange.
If you want to start that battle, if you want to not tie up park employees with mowing lawns every other day and cleaning trash barrels at the Little League field,
I wasn't the one who brought up that competition.
Do it the way they used to.
You brought up that comparison. I didn't bring up that comparison. When I said they weren't getting these things done, you said in Chelmsford they are. I said they're not getting them done in Chelmsford. I took my kid to Little League fields. And the reason why is because they're volunteers and they don't have that high payroll that we have. And you got to set expectations. If you don't hold people accountable, Teddy, why are you even paying? Is this more of a welfare system or is it a government system where we expect what we expect? We looked at the manager's evaluation last night. They had a personnel subcommittee prior to it. And in 2025, have you seen what that evaluation looks like? Have you seen what the
evaluation?
Oh, you've got to be impressed. And in 2014, that's what it looks like, Teddy. Is somebody honest? What's the definition of honest? What's the outline? What is that? This is a 1 page for a manager for an evaluation. Do they have integrity? Huh? Productivity. How do you rate these things without saying? So last night we had someone come in from UMass, the Collins Center.
Yeah, I watched it because I thought we were actually going to get the manager's evaluations, and we didn't.
No, they weren't graded, right. So when you looked at the piece that was given to us, it was 4 pages long. It was, here's what your definition to grade on is, and things like that. And when you look at it, you're like, and I asked this 2 years ago so that we could set goals and objectives and have real-time stuff. And when you look at it, we didn't get any of that. We got, the old HR department that was, hey, want to shake my hand? We can all get along. We'll hire whoever you want. We'll do that whole thing. And we've hired employees that can't meet their job description through the years. And that's a fact. The water department is falling apart because of that. And you were there when I had to come down to your place on Market Street and say, look, you're not tearing up this brand new road. We're going to have a leak detection done. And we found it in front of your place rather than putting 15 bunny holes in the middle.
That's an example of it being done right.
But when you look at hiring employees because they don't have the proper driver's license to drive the equipment that we just spent millions of dollars on, it sits in the garage and we get calling contractors and that stuff. That's where the inefficiencies are. That's where Manager Golden, I believe, in the next 2 years, you're going to see a total different management style, and he's going to hold people accountable. And he has been doing it, which has been an unbelievable change.
But you're pointing out issues from the past.
Well, that's
you're
how
praising the current manager for changes that are being made, including the evaluation forms and whatnot.
Yeah.
So again, why not lock this person up and, importantly, try to negotiate better terms than what you will have to pay for somebody else coming in?
There's a bigger picture. It's not a restaurant. It's a bigger picture. There's 1,000 employees we're talking about, not one. When you lock someone up are you willing to go to the police right now and lock up future 3-year contracts? Are you willing to go?
The police aren't going anywhere.
Neither is a manager.
When the manager's contract runs out, he's not going anywhere. A different council could decide to.
He's not going anywhere.
Police and teachers and DPW workers work in perpetuity. The terms of their contracts are renegotiated.
Most managers
You're not going to do away with your police department. You're not going to do away with your DPW.
We're not going to do away with the city manager either.
Right, exactly. So you're going to have to pay that money one way or the other.
We are paying the money.
But you're still going to have to pay it 2-3 years from now. And again, whether the check on it says Thomas Golden or so-and-so.
So what's the rush?
Because you have somebody who all of you say is doing a great job.
So I would disagree.
All of you say he's doing a great job. Why wouldn't you want to lock that person up?
How many
Mookie Betts, John
How many
Lester.
great employees in the city of Lowell have left because the contracts don't fit their needs? I can name them. If you want to go down the line, I was one of them. I didn't have those contract years out. It's saying, okay, here's my stability. Another town did this. So it happens all the way through. You may not want to recognize that the great math teacher at Lowell High just got offered more money in Andover. So why are
100%.
Why are we not doing the same thing for them? So every employee has the same value.
You do that for them every 3 years. And to my
why didn't we do that for managers?
And to my understanding, Paul Georges likes to wait till the very last minute because he sees what everybody else got, and then he makes sure the teachers get more.
I can't speak for Paul Georges.
But you can speak for his record. He's very good at negotiating, and he always manages to get the teachers more money than every other union.
If I were any of these unions and I see this happen,
wouldn't you want to lock up Paul Georges now? Wouldn't it be beneficial to go to the teachers union and say, you know, we'd like to negotiate a couple more years?
No, because I don't know if 2008 is right around the corner, and I don't know if 1995 is right around the corner.
The layoffs come separate, but in the terms of those who are actually employed,
the layoffs don't come separate. They don't. It's all in that union package. If the package is overpriced, you lay off more. If the package is down, you don't lay off as many. So it doesn't come in that package.
So that you try to negotiate more favorable terms with every employee every group of employees.
I would rather negotiate in a time when there's knowns versus unknowns. You tell me what's going to happen in 2029, and I'll be shocked. You tell me what's going to happen. I don't know the answer. Is there a change in the way government operates? Right now, we've hired more assistant city managers than ever. We have more of an umbrella underneath people that have worked. We've seen the largest contracts for many of the employees all the way through. And I don't know that when we go back to what our population makes for money, and when you're looking at 19% making under $25,000, if it's a pure representation to say, what message do we send to them when you're willing to do these things on the backside?
Weren't you pushing for better pay for the employees so that we could fill some of those openings that we have? Wasn't that the whole argument?
We had to.
Oh, okay, because so you pushed for more money for them. What do you say to the residents who are making less money then? When you need to do something,
the market's a driver.
The money, right?
The market's the driver. I don't know the market in 28 and 29, and that's what I keep saying to you. You keep saying these things, but if the market goes south again, and they say the state comes in and says, "Hey, listen, we're going to give you 50% instead of 70," what do we do? What do we do on that? I don't know the driver right now, so I don't want to lock up future funding that way for a lot of contracts.
So an extra $10,000 a year for one employee.
It's not about $10,000. You made that argument all the way through, and it's more than $10,000. But you've made that argument in the beginning. Again, it's the picture, Teddy. It's a big government agency. It's not a small business where $10,000. It's a big government agency. You're not wrong. When you look at a $583 million budget, $10,000, but it's the selling point to that $10,000. You know, what is it? What is the image being sent off?
So you mentioned you said $1 billion. Is that the unfunded liabilities?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's the employees' post benefits.
Yeah, okay.
It's not our unfunded. There's many unfunded liabilities.
Of that is unfunded, correct?
There's more than that.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got $1 billion. Is anyone going to make a play to go after those? Because that's the real savings. The point I'm trying to make is if you can negotiate the manager's contract and he'll get a 2% annual raise instead of 4% or whatever, all well and good. The budget busters are benefits for your employees. Are you ready to take on that battle?
We have. We've taken it on every single budget. Where's the other support? I know what 10-to-1 feels.
Have those liabilities gone? Have those liabilities gone down? The long-term, the pensions, the budgets, are those disappearing? Are people having to work?
No,
longer?
we're hiring more employees, so they're going up.
Are people having to work longer before they retire? They're living longer.
Well, it did happen. Yes, in 2012, the state came in and did do that, right? So they pushed it off to no, not with GIC. No. The pension plan in Massachusetts for the employees. Correct. Changed from 80% at 60. Now it's basically the same exact setting as Social Security. So yeah, they did take on that fight. Okay. And yeah, government did fight that fight. I think it's totally wrong because some people didn't move in that direction. And when you got people who have worked in an industry for 40 years plus, I think there's movable pieces there that should have been adjusted with it. But yes, they did take on that fight, and they are pushing people to the end of their lives in saying you're going to work from 18 to 67, and it's the same as they do in your world. Mm-hmm. So yes, government did take on that fight. There's no more room in that fight for that. But when you look at
and then government grew, so the long-term liabilities keep growing.
And that's what we're discussing. Okay. Underneath a manager, when you look at all the assistant city managers, and then you look at all the breakdowns in between, you see government has grown. But you know, when we allow employees not to do their job and then hire someone in there because they say they're overwhelmed at their job, we've had employees, we put GPS on them, they unplug the GPS. We've had employees, upper level employees with the GPS, drive to places they shouldn't be. Is that efficiency? And no. The managers held them all accountable. And that's the direction we're sending, and that's the direction we're going. We're saying if we're going to ask the taxpayer for more money, we have to be at the highest level of efficiency and understand future years out and where we're going.
You're making the case for why Lowell has had good government it has changed in the last couple of years. And by the way, the council points in that direction as well. But
some of the council,
you talked about the DEI things, right?
Yeah.
Weren't you guys?
I didn't talk about it. You did. I just brought your message to this.
But you said, has the city changed that? Yet? No, but there's a federal government that told you last week, this better change or else. Now, but at the time, 2-3 years ago, when the Lowell's DEI score, whatever that, some outside agency came in, that was a motion on the council floor, and you basically told the manager, let's fix it. Yeah. So you guys basically okayed the creation of that title, that department. You brought in people to train your employees, your management on DEI, right?
If you remember that conversation. If you remember that conversation, I said, why isn't this implemented in HR currently? Why do we not have, if we're hiring wrong, that comes to the HR director. Why is it that we just give a pass to everybody who should be doing a job and create another position?
Well,
I said that at that time.
You have a new HR department now,
but right? I said that at that time.
A new HR leader and other people underneath.
So you can't go back in time and not say the whole story. The whole story was, I said that in time. There was no need for this position if HR is running correctly. It was a definite say at that time. I'll send you over the video.
I remember it very, very well. And I agree with you. Why the whole DEI movement to me was just another way to expand government.
I think it always should be in government.
There's no, if a human resource department is being run right, there's no need for DEI. So whether you want to call it a DEI director or a human resources director,
correct,
whatever, that should be.
And done. DEI has taken a total shift away from what it actually is. It looks at employment. Do we have an aging staff, or do we have a? It doesn't just go by race. It's not just a race piece, DEI. It has, are we meeting male gender equality? There are a lot of pieces to it that, you look at and you're like, okay, what is the term DEI? And that all should be in the hiring practices of HR. But you can't.
But now
change.
it's unconstitutional. It's been ruled that you can't take this into account because it's discrimination. So the whole
well, it was always discrimination, wasn't it? But when you get a packet of,
but now you're told you can't go the other way. Affirmative action in terms of colleges, college admissions is now done. Some folks are interpreting that to mean affirmative action in terms of hiring police officers, teachers,
didn't we do that when we gave certain people percentage points for civil service exams? Didn't we do that? Now it's federally not, so when you look at this whole piece and you start talking about what people want, when I get applicants, 30 of them, I go through all of them. I look at resumes, I look at that, I give them to 5 people, unknown, they come back.
Do you have to take DEI into?
No.
Do you have to take those issues into account when you do your hiring out there?
You take the name off the application. What we do is we look at what's going to be the best fit, the best applicant for the position.
Sure, but up until January 20th of 2025, if you didn't meet certain quotas, you were going to get yourself in some trouble, right?
I get them handed to me from HR. So if they hand me 30 applicants, my job is to look at them and make sure I'm hiring the right person for the position that fits within.
Sure, but the emphasis was on hiring diversity. So good. Congratulations to you for bucking the system.
No, I don't think it was ever.
We're coming off a track over the last 4 years where that became the end all be all.
For some people, for some places, Massachusetts maybe, but a lot of places didn't push that envelope. I've never been in a position where someone said you need to look at only these because they fit a certain criteria, unless it was a will of the market itself.
You're fortunate you had a school committee out there at the vote and a superintendent.
In Lexington, I did the hiring too. Lexington, I did all the hiring when it came in. If there was anything, I never once got a call from the town manager or a selectman out there to ask to interview anybody. It was, here's the applicants, go through them. And probably a majority of the time we ended up with someone who was a perfect fit.
Yeah, but you know that's not how it works or has been working. You were in anywhere. We're talking about Lowell, but just 2 weeks ago, didn't Councilor Newton put a motion on there to look at the police force and why they haven't been able to meet certain quotas?
Well, because I think there's some personnel issues you can't even bring to the public, because if you have 30 applicants and they're all white, how do I pick a minority? And I say that to people, you don't even know what the applicants are, and you're telling me I'm hiring the wrong person.
Okay, but the way government, especially government in Massachusetts, and yes, government in Lowell works, is they're telling you, we don't care if the 30 applicants were white, do something to make sure that there's 35 applicants and the other 5 are diverse. You know that.
So I go down some camp.
You're just lucky nobody ratted you out at the...
I don't think there was anything
before January 20th.
I think the hardest thing for anybody to do is to you don't even know the outcome of my hires. First of all, you're assuming they're all white, right? You're assuming that. That's the way you just said. You're like, no one ratted you out, so you're assuming they're all white, but they weren't.
But for not making it part of your policy.
But maybe my hiring practice ended up the policy that they wanted anyway.
That's the ideal world. Isn't that the dream that MLK had, that we don't judge people based on all this other stuff? We judge them on the content of their character.
I would hope that's the way most people do hiring, but I know otherwise. I know otherwise. Yes.
You know it's not.
But if you want efficiency, you have to have people who can mesh together in an environment that creates, it's so much easier in my world to make a bad employee than it is to keep a good employee. And that's really the world of municipal government. It's very easy to bring very good, educated people who want to do great, and once they get in an environment, they dump down, and you see sides of them that you never saw before.
100%. No, I don't think anybody takes a new job thinking I'm going to be able to slough off for 40 hours a week for 25 years and get a nice pension.
That's the challenge.
I think they think I want to do well, and then they get into a bad work environment. They see other people sloughing off, and they eventually deteriorate. I think that happens with
The simplest thing as a manager and is saying thank you, is looking at something and saying, wow, that looks good, and just motivating people to the next level. And I think the manager does that well. He started a day for DPW recognition, employee recognition. He's done a lot of great things, and there's no takeaway from that at all. The manager has pushed recognition and trying to get into age-old problems that we just know have always been there.
You're making the case for keeping him around.
I want him around. I want him around. I just don't. I think he's going to be here.
So lock him in.
Why do I have to do that if I already have somebody? I'm married. I put the ring on your finger. I don't need to buy you another diamond and keep buying diamonds until
that ring says I'm keeping you long term. That's the commitment.
And
otherwise,
I think
if there's no ring, you're getting dumped.
I was the one. I was the one who pushed the 5-year contract, if you remember correctly, because I wanted that long-term commitment, because I wanted to see year 3 and 4 come to fruition, so I could promote that for extensions or.
Well, year 3 is almost over.
No, it isn't. You're in 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3. So then you get 3 to 4, 4 to 5.
He's been in the job for almost 3 years, give or take 2 months.
That means you've been doing it for 2.
So he's been. Well, no, he's been doing it for 3. He may not have put the first. The first budget was a kind of a left leave over from.
But that's at every manager, right?
But there are other things. That's changing a culture started on April 28th of 2022. I would think, correct? Yes, was his first budget the one with the 5% tax increase? That he takes the full blame on that one. But changing a culture, reconfiguring things, starting negotiations with potential developers and whatnot. You know, again, and by the way, this isn't just Tom Golden. This is you.
I watched your Love Fest yesterday, I think
he's doing a spectacular job. I think he's going to go down as one of the best city managers in history. He's a transformational leader. I think you guys made the right call in 2022 in bringing him on board, and I think it's the right call to extend him. Whether it does or not, whether he sticks around or not. But
have you had a conversation with the manager?
I have conversations with him all the time.
Right. So have you had a conversation about the contract with the manager?
No, other than I have not. I reached out to him when I saw Councilor Mercier's motion, and I said, have you seen the agenda? Have you had
a conversation with the mayor on this whole contract?
I've had conversations with the mayor in the past on it. Yep, I have.
When I spoke to the manager, he has no way he wants to go anywhere. I would agree with you if the premise of this extension is based off of we don't know who's going to be here in January. I would agree with that, say, all right, so we have something good. We better lock it in because we're unsure. If that was presented that way, then it puts people in a dilemma to say, okay,
it also
you could be
your
right.
Guy's legacy as a council.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Elections change things, and of course this is a political battle. We all know this.
But no one's admitting it in public. Why didn't they just come out and say, look, you know what? We're worried about January. We want to lock you up now for the back 3 years.
Who's the nobody? I hear a lot of people saying, I like Tommy, but... You know, that's, to me...
Who says that?
Everybody.
I've heard that.
A million times. First of all, everybody on the council said it, even those of you who voted and saying now's not the time to do the extension.
I don't think I ever said I like Tommy, but...
Political situations change, as you know. Now, do I think this council is going to change? I don't think you're going to get more than one change, and I'm not sure you're getting any change on this council. You're running for re-election, by the way, right?
I would hope so.
At large.
Unless I die.
Well, okay, good. So you're doing the
I don't know.
But, so, again, as I look at that field, I'm not sure you're going to get any turnover, and you very rarely do. Even last time.
All right, so if nothing changes, what's the rush?
Because politics change.
Because this is a political issue during an election season. That's what this was brought on as. Do you 100%. Support the manager? Don't you support the manager? 100%. That's what this is trying to be dragged out as. It's a Bernie Lynch time, right? Do you support the manager? Correct. Don't you support the manager? Just because I took a vote not to extend a contract does not mean that I don't support the manager, as is being portrayed.
But you know there are.
I'm not a big contract. I think we signed a 5-year contract.
You know there are people that have been that basically didn't want this manager hired. Which, again, I thought at that time was the right decision for the city. I thought Eileen Donahue was the right hire. There were people who didn't want to hire Eileen Donahue.
There's going to be people out.
Exactly. Oh. But you know that there is this movement out there. I don't
know that. I've never had anybody approach me on that. Never.
Of course it is.
I've never had anybody ever approach me or say anything about the manager removing him or anything remotely like that. But maybe because I have a relationship with the manager, or
it's a $600 million budget. It's always about controlling that budget. Who controls it? What are the priorities? This manager, this council has made a decided shift that I believe is 100% for the better, where the nonprofits are not running the city anymore or don't have as much input as they used to have, where one neighborhood isn't running the city. Wasn't that the whole complaint? One neighborhood is running the city because they can get out the vote. That was the whole reason we went to district representation. The politics of that start to change. And if you want to see the city continue to move in a direction that you have set forth, it's probably best to continue electing the same
So then why don't I
council
give him a 30-year contract and get out of
Well,
here?
you can't by law. You can only give him 5 years, as you pointed out.
But you could probably get a waiver from the state. All we got to do is put a home rule petition together. But why didn't we go to a 10-year and say, all right, here we are. We're locked in. 10 years, we're going to see this whole...
Because the norm is 3 to 5 years.
Oh, so now we're defining...
That's the norm.
It's not the norm. The norm is not 5 years. The norm is not 5 years. We created the 5 years. The norm in all town managers and city managers is 3 years. There is not a norm of 5
Correct.
years. We created that because we felt as though we wanted that first contract. At least I'm speaking for myself. The first contract, I wanted that solid piece where I said, okay, I really want to see the out years of 4, 5, because I honestly believe in, and as I said to you earlier, year 0 to 1 is basically trying to find yourself, looking at a budget here. I don't care who the manager is, whether there's someone who thinks that they have 30 years and another place comes in. 0 to 1 is finding out the layout of the land in the community you're going to. So to me, that's a waste year. It's a year where, okay, here we are, we're going to try to pull things.
That's where it helps to have somebody who has been in the land for...
I think 𝗂𝗶𝗶𝗆 was that guy.
20-something years.
No, I think 𝗂𝗶𝗆 was that guy. He was in there. It's a relationship that works back and forth. And when you look at that, they've made really good decisions based off of that back and forth. Okay, I've been here. I understand that. You've seen some good decisions out of that, right? So that's fairness. But when you say the norm is 3 to 5, it's not true. The norm for contracts for city managers or town managers is 3 years. No, and usually they get re-upped in year between 2 and 3. So it's really defined down. And I've done the research on all of this. And, Paul Cohen just got a 4-year because the people were really worried that the changeover and all of the craziness in Chelmsford. Chelmsford change is easier. Chelmsford.
So there you go.
But why didn't the maker of the motion say that? The reason why I'm here is because I think that I'm worried about fluctuation in the political environment.
I think the way is say, I want to ensure that we continue going on this path forward, which I think Councilor 𝗪𝗲𝗓 did say to some degree. I'm kind of surprised about the 3-year thing. I would have figured a 2-year extension, but...
And then, when you're quoting Jerry Nutter as your peace out, I'm like, yeah, right.
Jerry knows his numbers.
Yeah. But when you look at the whole piece, I don't think it's a bad decision. I think it's the wrong time for the decision when I look at all the contracts that go on. You don't just rip up contracts that you're in the middle of. We've the Hamilton Canal District, where we're fighting like a tooth and nail on issues down there. And you're saying, okay, do we change what our outlook is because the person who is in the driver's seat of the contract now wants it changed? Or is it our vision? Whose vision is it? And that's really what the challenge is.
It should be the city's vision.
You sure about that?
Something that's applicable.
I can't talk about it. It's executive session, but I'll just say that. Are you sure about it?
Do you know something we don't? Is
of course I do.
Is Salapoli going to get his new plans?
I was in executive session.
Is Salapoli? Did the council? Did people say, okay, we're going to let Salapoli?
I can't talk about that. It was an executive session.
Should I, if I went and wagered my life savings on what
I
type
can't
of
talk about your life savings because you have so much you don't have to worry about waging this year's life savings, this life's.
We're chatting with Lowell City Councilor Erik Gitschier. I do want to talk about a tour he did of Lowell High School. You better come back more often, by the way. Let me just quickly thank our sponsors, and I'm just going to apologize to the sponsors. I love you. You know I love you, but I want to get to as much time and have this conversation as possible. So thank you to Real Estate Ray Booten, sponsor of the Inside Lowell Daily Post, which you are watching here on this Wednesday, February 19th. Thank you to our friends at WellPoint for hosting us in the WellPoint studios. Washington Savings Bank, I love you. Every time I switch to Councilor Gitschier's camera, I take a sip out of your mug. TMI Properties, Mahoney Oil, the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, Francis E. Prevention Insurance, and the Massachusetts Pirates. All right, I have.
While we still have the attention of people, I just would like to highlight this weekend is Winterfest.
Thank you. Yes, you brought me a gift.
We gave you. Well, it's a re-gift. I don't want you to think like I bought. It's a re-gift.
Wait, you re-gifted?
I re-gifted.
Suddenly,
I don't drink coffee, so it's not. I'm thankful for it.
You can put water in it.
It just gave me a good up with you.
Thank you. Yes, Winterfest. Don't hibernate. Come celebrate. And the weather looks great. Thank God we're not getting this snow and ice we've had. You went on a walking tour of Lowell High School.
I did.
Last week. I woke up this morning to an email from Deep Diploma, my source in the high school, who was shadowing you folks while you were walking around there. Is this information accurate? Because I had it confirmed by a second source this morning, and now I want to see if you can confirm it. The ceiling in the 1922 auditorium, which we were told when they were doing this at the beginning, they were drilling all these holes and getting all this data. The ceiling in the 1922 auditorium was only supposed to be 2% asbestos. That number is over 80%, maybe as high as 86%, and will eat into the contingency. That's a big difference. You plan a project, you plan a budget for 2% asbestos or hazardous material removal, and it turns out to be 80. Maybe is that 86 number accurate?
I don't know. They didn't give us a number.
Okay, but is it 80%? Over 80%?
It was high. It was extremely high. It was what they call it in our world of engineers is hot. It was extremely hot.
All right, extremely hot. Has that? It will eat into the contingency. Was what I was told. Now, has that already been assigned? Because a couple of weeks ago we saw the charts and we know the $21 million contingency. X amount has been used. X amount is now in the working, which I believe was 6 million, and there's what, 5 million left, 6 million left. Has that been already accounted for, that new discovery, or is that going to eat up the rest of the contingency budget and then some?
Again, you remember when I asked the question to the OPM.
He doesn't like you, does he?
We actually went to grade school together, which is we're in the same.
Were you friendly then?
No, but again,
where's Sean Edwards, by the way? How come Sean hasn't shown up to any meetings in the last?
Again,
months?
he just does. The conflicting thing is what Suffolk actually does. And what the others do. The OPM is totally different than Skanska is totally different than Suffolk, right? Suffolk just takes the diagrams that the person, Perkman and Eastman is the architect. They were the ones who came in with all of these. We did all the research. If you remember at the time, they did all the research. We know where every single inch of asbestos is. Everything's going to be good, blah, blah, blah. Well, that turned out to not be true. When you look at now Skanska and Jim Dowd, his job is to make sure that everything lives up to the documents, right? So that's his job. And when you look at Suffolk just implores out of what the OPM tells them and the architect's drawings and puts it together.
And they build it.
They just build it.
One quick,
in fairness to that company.
Before you go on, is the OPM's job to make sure the project is getting done to the specifications? Is it also to protect the cities
Absolutely.
And the state? Because the state is putting up, what, 68% of this. So,
yeah.
But anybody watching in Lexington or Billerica or whatever, you're paying for this disaster as well. So congratulations to you. Well, you get a brick in the high school. But so their job is to also watch this money.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, they're your new, basically.
And to warn you when this money is starting to disappear quickly.
Yeah, and we had to put in a motion to see where the update was. Councilor, Mayor Rourke at the time and I had put in a motion asking for updates on change orders monthly, routinely, as they were happening. We never saw it until we just filed another motion asking, okay, can you bring us where we are on this stuff? And that's when we got Jim Dow from Skanska back in and performed to the council. And at that time they said this. Then I asked for a tour of the building for the council. And as we get into this tour, at that point, that moment in time, we were told the contingency was going to go over, but there were other line items that they could take funding from and it was going to cover it. So the overall budget was in great shape. It was not going to go over, blah, blah, blah. So they hate seeing me when I walk into these projects because I I ask questions that maybe sometimes I shouldn't ask.
To me, that's you at your best. When you ask operational questions, when you ask these types of issues, maintenance, construction, that's you at your best.
So we walk down the hallway of the building and there's no ceiling. And he goes, yeah, well, we weren't really going to have to take out the ceiling. We didn't know that this carrying beam was there. I said, can I ask you a question? If you didn't know there was a carrying beam under there, what was holding the load in that room? You have a whole nother floor over you. I just wonder how they typed this into a computer and didn't realize that the carrying beams carry the load. And if you didn't see it, wouldn't you have looked for it? Well, we didn't, you know, so that's where money comes in. They said, you know, in the basement's the other issue. You know, I worked for Lands and Buildings in the early 90s, and down in the basement used to be a health, with the water department. I know I was there in the 90s too. There was a health department down there, and it would flood every time it rained because the canal did what? It went up, it created pressure, the water came in from the canal.
School is built on a canal, for those who might not be familiar, and when the water level goes up in the canals, actually by this point, probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of students who've gone through that building will tell you that we knew during rainy season the water came up.
Well, it's built on a fieldstone foundation, right? So, I mean, when you look at the foundation and you look at, you know, through the years, things just percolate and happen. So they had to lower the canal to see where the water was going. When we walked through, they said, oh, you know, the floor isn't quite 4 inches thick. It's only 2 inches. Which is
not code today.
Right.
Might have been code when it was built, but it's not today. Did they not know this in 2017?
Wouldn't you take borings to see what the size of the floor was, right? That's just, you know, part of the project. As you're going through, you would think you'd cut a boring in and see what the floor was like.
So you now have to add at least 2 more inches of concrete to bring it up to code.
You can't add. You have to take out. You have to take all that floor out of the building. Goodbye.
And then start from scratch.
Because there's not the proper rebar. It's not in the middle. There's a lot of things that
and nobody knew this in 2016, 2017, 2018, when the political jihad was taking place in Lowell.
It was never brought to the attention of anybody.
It was known, though. People talked about it. People talked about.
I don't know about the thickness of the floor. If it was
people talked about asbestos. We
talked about the flooding in the bottom and how they had the special needs kids down there one time. There was a whole conversation in that, right?
You were one, by the way. You weren't running for council. But you were very vocal. I saw you at a couple of the meetings, and you were very vocal about some of the challenges of rehabbing this building and what you were going to run into. You knew what was going to happen once that die was cast.
You know, because that's the background we do, right? So you know if it's easier to build a new wall, but again, after seeing the new building over there, I'm not sold that the new building wouldn't have had problems on the property that's over there. So again, trying to take one position on another position, my whole point to everything was a facilities position more so than placement of a building and where they were going to do it. But when you look at the new portion, you have issues with the maintenance piece because people are not maintaining things. It's 2.5 years in, and the basketball court looks bad. It hasn't been maintained at all. You're talking about heating issues already. You know, people have issues with other things. Doorknobs falling off. Well, doorknobs fall off doors when you have 3,500 kids in there daily moving things. One person pointed to a tile and said the kids were damaged. And I said, well, there's a camera right there. It's facing them. How are the kids damaged? Then it went from the kids to, well, it may have been a faulty architectural drawing.
Well, kids have been putting wear and tear or damaging school buildings for generations. That's part, you kind of have to bake that into the pie.
Inside the locker rooms, you can see it.
Right.
Once it gets into the open spaces now where you have these cameras, I don't believe it to be true. I think it's an easy out to say.
Shoddy workmanship is what you think.
I think shoddy design more than the workmanship. I put in whatever you want, Teddy. If I'm building a car for Teddy Panos and he wants an electric car, hey, here's your electric motor, go away. You know, if you want certain things, I just do what you tell me.
So again,
but the maintenance piece is big.
Sometimes a failure by government, though, because who sets these codes? It's the state codes, sets these rules, and then cities and towns have to follow them. So if these codes were followed, Do we know that they were followed?
The floor on the basketball court was followed. Okay. It was improper maintenance for you can't leave a brand new floor for 2.5 years and do no maintenance. You're not even washing it right. You know, and then you're out there, you play floor hockey inside, kids play things. And, you know, if you look at New England sports floors, they tell you, we had a whole meeting when I first started the position I'm in about our floor. What is the proper maintenance? What do we need to do it? You have to have special wash to do it. You have to have special mops and stuff like that to do it, to dry it right, so it doesn't chip like that. And then, you know, when you look at it, you didn't do that for 2.5 years. So it isn't the installation. It's not any of that. It has to be routinely maintained. If you don't change the oil in your car and you blow up the motor, you can't blame Ford Motor Company for the motor. And that's what happens in a lot of cases. The bleachers, when it goes over the rug, okay, the tolerances are so tight when you do that, that if anything goes out of 1/4 of an inch, will rip, right? Every year you're supposed to have them inspected. They didn't do it for 2.5 years. So the 1/4 inch now becomes 1/2 inch, becomes this and that. You've got people jumping up and down, cheering. There's wear and tear on it. So we have to get better if we want these things to last. And we're paying the long dollar on these things that would cover the cost of having the employee.
And it's also eating up the budget for the full construction project, as we found out, because
they're taking
you that out.
maintenance.
We're calling Suffolk, who happens to be on site, to come fix these issues, but the city of Lowell is getting billed for it.
Correct. And I wonder who the people are who are calling Suffolk and not saying, hey, can we fix these things? Could I call Hussey in Maine and have them come down and actually look at my bleachers or look at this stuff? Yeah. And the inspection was $9,000. It cost me, I think they're coming next week, right around now. I think it's like $2,400 to look at the bleachers and inspect it. So I think you just need to manage down and say, okay, what is ours? It's been turned over to you. So any flaw in there is on you. If your contractor comes in and finds it's faulty installation or something, that's when the billing goes back to the contractors.
So the bleachers thing wasn't maintained, but the design, this is where
the tolerances are too tight.
So is the design, when Manager Golden was sitting in there, we were talking about that, and like, can you claw back based on a faulty design?
I don't believe so.
I say good luck trying to get it back from the state.
I don't believe you ever can, because, you know, it's engineered, the tolerances are there, and you didn't do your maintenance to them.
On the bleachers, yes. What about, you talked about there's potentially faulty designs in other areas.
Yeah, there are some, like when you look at the seats in the locker room. You know, when a 130-pound person sits on it and the thing bends like this, yeah, well, I would say there's a faulty design here. Right. When the other bleachers that are longer and in the middle that aren't attached to the wall, you have blocks set up holding them up. Why didn't you just put block underneath those to hold them up? You know, there's certain things that could have been easily done at the time when you were there. And now,
again, you'd like to think that a design is made to, because there are some heavy people. I might have been skinny in high school, but if I ever sat on one of those things now, it would probably snap.
I wouldn't sit on it now. I was looking at it going, I better not go sit on that.
So that's clearly a design
when
issue.
When you open the door into the locker room, there's a handicap shower right there, and there's a lip that has to be put across for ADA compliance. Well, it's like a rubber, so they can roll over with a wheelchair, right? So the door opens up in and rips the thing. I said, did anybody hear of a doorstop? Put it in the bottom so it doesn't go too far and rip the thing. I mean, those are simple things that if you had a maintenance, if I was someone there, they could say, oh, geez, you know, we need to. Yes, do you let somebody off in design? Yeah, but I mean, it's pennies on the dollar. Why get into these big pushbacks?
All right. And that's where we're going to end with this topic. You push for a facilities department. You push for it citywide, and you're also pushing for it now specifically for that building, because whatever the debates were in 2017, it's done. Building's there. We got to make sure that building can service the kids and be the best building for those kids. Do you believe that having a dedicated facilities department will solve a lot of these issues, and how long will it take to implement this? And also, to get the people in that facilities department who are skilled enough and trained enough to do the things that are necessary without basically, taking them out of circulation from the rest of the city's buildings. Are you going to have to hire brand new people? You're going to have to hire anyway, right? And the question is, do you just hire them for the high school, or do you bring people into the high school and then fill in the slots elsewhere?
I do believe in, and we'll go back to the budget piece, because everything comes on money, right? And I think it's a penny wise up front and a pound foolish on the backside, because those buildings are there to have people in them, education, and that's the goal, right? So the cost to maintain them up front is more expensive, but in the long run, the savings and mold issues and everything else that go on in these buildings, that savings piece will be encountered in the out years.
Even when you take in the long term, the benefits and the retirement funding and all that, you still, if you've crunched, I assume you've crunched these numbers. I know you do your homework. So you think that that's still a savings. So there's an example of it's better to hire the people than to pay for the maintenance 20 years down the road.
So take a room that you just put a classroom in, right? You have a classroom in there, and today you put one teacher in there, and tomorrow you need a second teacher put in there. Just to run the electrical over will cost you $10,000-$20,000. My electrician does that in 3 hours, and it's just part of his salary, right? So when you look at these things that they can do, a toilet overflowing, right? Getting it right away with someone in the building is going to save you long-term damage to the building. We had a sprinkler head break last term. It was cold. In 7 minutes, it was shut off. The damage was contained to an area where just the Kaivax could do it. If that's at the high school, you could be at millions of dollars in damage. So I think that the unknowns are hard to justify, but if it does happen, that's what the problem is. Kids playing basketball, you can see the sprinkler head there. They're playing volleyball, boom, hit something, and here you go. And they do it in the hallways. So
they hang off the sprinkler heads. I watched grown adults do it when I worked at Channel 50. They were hanging off the sprinkler
which is
heads.
nuts.
One camera guy pulled it down. So, all right. So then...
I do think the savings is there, yes.
So, okay. So I think everybody agrees with you, by the way, that's a good idea. And from what I understood at the last council meeting, that's basically coming, right?
But we have to remember, just hiring an employee in 2025 does not mean in 2035 that the employee is holding the same professional aptitude that you hired them with. You have to have professional development in between and say, okay, we want to know where we are. Electrical might be a little bit easier, but like you take some of our fire issues, like what happens is a bad smoke detector happens, sets off the fire alarm. Fire department comes out, here we are, we have to fix it right away. I would have to call a contractor to come do it, but my licensed electrician is fast enough to change it in 20 minutes and everybody's happy. There's so much that moves in those big buildings that people don't understand. In the ductwork on the returns, there are smoke detectors in there. They're highly technical pieces of equipment that need to be looked at all the time. Our kitchens and stuff like that. It's just, there's a lot of work in these departments that if you're keeping good employees who teachers will come over to and say, hey, thank you so much. Or the floors look great. I think the challenge is we do have a facilities department currently in the city. It's lands and buildings. Can you branch out and just create? Absolutely you can. That's non-negotiable. I own the building. I'm telling you, my facilities department is here. It's non-negotiable.
So the high school facilities department is an easy fix. We should see it pretty quickly.
Is an easy fix. But
how about you?
If you want to take and include now a facilities department that includes the custodians, that's where the challenge now gets in, because now you're crossing over the unions and trying to build up a facilities. If you go in there and you look at the floor, well, you went now from a custodial department to a facilities department because the floor is wrecked and now it's got to be redone because of the lack of maintenance on the other side or training to the employees. Were they even trained on how to clean that floor? Because I believe the high school in the field house, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the gym wasn't hardwood.
No, it's not.
It wasn't, right?
Right.
So did somebody actually take these employees and say, look, we're going from a rubber floor to a hardwood floor. Here is the maintenance technique to it. You can't use the same cleaner that you're doing on tile or somewhere else. Here's the stuff you need to have. Here's what you need to clean it with. Here's where we're going from this. I don't believe that's probably ever been done. And that's where now you got create the custodial staff may be washing the floor every night with the wrong detergents. And now you're looking at, okay, were they trained right? And how do we stop this from becoming a maintenance nightmare every time? Because now you're going from the custodial department over to them and they're actually doing their work, but maybe it's the wrong detergents or the wrong stuff you're cleaning it with, and it's giving that haze and it's giving that look.
How do you change your bigger picture, which was you need a facilities department for the whole city? Now you said we have that in lands and buildings.
Yep.
So if we have that, I mean, changing the title
small.
of it,
it's small.
Is it too small?
It's too small.
That's the problem.
There's two plumbers. There's two HVAC. There's just not.
Exactly. So how many employees do you believe are required to bring it, and whatever we're going to call it, facilities, whether we're going to call it lands and buildings? But your big change, first of all, you want to tie in the school department people as well. Because there's a separate school department.
Because if you're going to do training, what's the purpose of frustrating a maintenance person? Now we got to grind down a floor. That, remember, those floors come in and they're wood. So every time you sand them down and you take the decals off, what happens to the wood? And eventually the ball doesn't bounce the same way. You don't get the same use out of it. You want it to last at the layer it's at for 10 to 15 years, not 2.5 years. And now he said to me that day, oh, we're just going to sand it down, take it off. I go, you're just going to do what? You're taking the life expectancy out of the wood that's underneath it right off. And here we are again. So we're not getting the product that we actually paid for at that point. It's the challenge on the number piece. Again, you have to look at each building's age. Has it been maintained? What are the demands you're going to need? And really have a real sit down and say, okay, if there's like Manager Golden asked me about replacement of filters for the heating units. We have a contract. I don't know what the actual, it's over $200,000. The company comes in, changes the filters. They got to be changed every 3 months. And they maintain all of those units. They do all that stuff. Everything is on them. I have an HVAC guy who works with them. And if there's anything wrong, he fixes it in minutes. So we're trying to keep the learning environment at its highest. And you've seen our MCAS scores go up. You've seen all that stuff. And I'd like to attribute some of that to the environment you learn within. I think the Pawtucket Memorial, when you're in there and you're fighting the same thing all the time, put on a jacket, take off a jacket. And I think it affects the learning environment for students. I don't care what anyone says. When you walk in a building and you feel comfortable, it's a better environment to learn within. So Lowell's challenge will always be public safety, number one, in your schools. If you can clean those up and make sure people are comfortable, which I believe we're doing when you look at the homeless piece and you look at the schools, we have no city manager or maintenance department has done as much as we have done over the last few years. Yes, we've had ARPA money to help. Yes, we've had other revenue sources. Where we go from here is the question, because those costs are now going to shift over to the city side. And where are we going to get those funds right now? I don't have that answer because I don't see a lot of the revenue projections yet for this budget. Are they better? And currently, when I looked at the revenue projections, because I had asked the auditor 3 years ago to put all of the munis reports online, which you can view, our revenue projections are over already. So we should be in a good place with revenue projections from this year again. Are we going to have to manipulate those revenue projections up a little bit more so we can use revenue over to fund some of these things? That's where the question comes in for the manager. How are we going to fund these things?
I'm sure those are questions you're going to be asking.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reading that has to still go on. You got to go through all of these. These budgets are not easy. When you look at them and you're like, okay, well, why is this or that? And sometimes when you ask why, you're trying to educate yourself, but also other people around you. You may even know the answer. And you're just like, okay, so can you tell me why? And then you're in there and the question comes up at that point, as you do as an interviewer. That's what you do. You come in, you ask a question. Then when you see someone's direction, you're like, but why? Like we did earlier about, you seem that you believe the manager, and I do believe the manager should have an extension. I just don't think it's the right time because of the length of the contract we gave and the outskirt years that I don't know how government's reacting right now. On the federal level, they shut down, infrastructure projects and then had to get challenged at the Supreme Court to overrun. Is that, I don't know. Everybody though is still questioning things on government money right now.
Yeah, you're hearing a lot of
and it might be noise. It might be all noise. But it does make people nervous. It pushes you to a place.
But if I were the city, I would start looking
Planning.
at all the stuff, the DEI stuff, change your language, change your departments. Schools should be doing the same thing to fall in line with how it's going to be for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
I do think, though, the right team is in place both at City Hall, but also in the council. I think you guys are a good mix. I think that when we look back at these last 3 years and then what the next 3 to 5 are going to bring between what UMass Lowell is doing and what the front runner city potential is, I think this city is going to be unrecognizable. I think this is going to harken back to the days of, when the national park first came into town and the benefits that came out of that.
There is no question that it has the most positive outlook that we've seen in a long time. Now,
and to change a lot of those stats you talked about, the problem with Lowell, there's not a lot of disposable income.
There's not a lot of
in the city. I think what we're seeing is going to change that.
And I just think at the end, are we signing a ticket to the Titanic, or are we signing a ticket to go to paradise? I don't know those answers because there's so many unknowns. What is the funding source at the UN? I don't know that. I don't know any of this stuff. It's all new to us. It's all green to everybody in this country because no one else has done it. So we sit back. You have to be proud that you have an opportunity. It's the same thing when we talked about the ball field, okay? We had a ball field that we, again, the city of Lowell, let fall into disrepair. We owed roughly just under $1 million on the property. The UMass Lowell wanted us to give them, when Eileen was here, $5 million to take it. And in those negotiations, I said, there's no way. They're either going to pay us what we owe on that, or we'll sit on and watch it crumble, because it doesn't make sense to do that. The value of the property was well worth that $1 million. So the university never gave us $1 million. The university gave us $1 million with the stipulation that $750,000 that was earmarked from Congresswoman Trahan was there. So they gave us $250,000. So let's clear up everything so people don't say, "Oh, they gave you $1 million." They did not give us $1 million.
Well, the city got the money instead of paying
on the backside. Instead of
paying $5 million though, which was
we won.
I think Marty Meehan was asking for more.
We won. We won. And I met with Marty Meehan at Mill 5 about this, and I said, there is no way I am voting to give this to you and pay you money to take my asset. If you're here, we had to redo the lights. That's where all of these costs came in, when it was almost $1 million that we still owed. Was we redid the lights in that property. We redid certain things in there, and that's where our costs came in. So why wouldn't we want that back? You still have the lights. You still have everything that was rehab. So that was our whole premise to it, was, look, you know what? And they did, but they got the other properties with it, knowing that we were all going to be a partner in Link. We knew it was coming. I sat with the chancellor, the first person, and she was asking us for TIFs for certain things, and or would you be in when you look at it, infrastructure increases that the city of Lowell has to do came to us. So here we are. We were like, wow, they have a great vision here. We're on, and it was a great time. It is a great time, right? We want to see all these packages come through, because when we talk about disposable income and we talk about all these things, right, Teddy, and bringing it up, the only way we're going to bring it up is to create jobs, train people in the right direction, and have a place for them to go. And the Link project brings us to that direction. There will be jobs over there. There will be things that, at least on paper right now, right? There's going to be jobs there. Draper's not a company that isn't, up here in their thought process. So there's a lot of great things that are coming along, and we've moved in a direction. I don't think any sticking point on this whole extension thing, not extension thing, should even be thought about right now. That's the whole point, is everything is so positive. At this point, I don't think that, it's really something that I think the manager has done a good job.
All right, we're going to wrap it up there. I think I've gone longer with you than anyone else on a Daily Pulse podcast. Of course, there's other things on my list here that we could probably get to, but we'll save it for your next visit.
Yeah, we can do that. And I thank you for everything you do. I think that at the end of the day, this is a great avenue to get information to people.
Great place to have discussions as well.
And I always like ours. I always like our discussion.
You should see the ones we have off camera. Councilor Gitschier, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me again.
All right. It's Lowell City Councilor Erik Gitschier. Long discussion, great discussion, I think, about the direction the city is going in, where it can improve, and where it has succeeded. Hope you enjoyed as well. Tomorrow, we're going to talk to 𝗃𝗵𝗃 Buckley, some interesting political developments in Tewksbury, and 𝗃𝗵𝗃 can venture out beyond. On Friday, we'll have a reduced power hour show, as I'm calling it. Batch and Han will be in the studios. We'll talk to them. Till next time, everybody stay safe and stay warm.